big is this problem?
We don't know how big the problem is. The Chronicle reported that 80 officers have convictions or other misconduct in their records. We still, in the DA's office, do not have a list of those people. We do not have an identification of what that material is. We don't know whether these officers testified in any trials. So right now we're awaiting answers to our written questions from the police department.
But the onus is on you guys to provide this information to the defense attorneys.
It is. Under the law, we are imputed to have the knowledge of the police department. So it is ultimately the DA's office's obligation to turn it over. San Francisco, like most other counties in California, rely on the police department to give the information over. And in those counties, in the great majority of counties, it's an informal mechanism that clearly is not working. And so that's why our office has implemented now a written policy. That's why we've asked the police department to identify all people who have Brady information and other misconduct so we can get it into the hands of the defense lawyers who deserve it, frankly.
Any sense how many cases are at stake?
No, because we don't know who these police officers are. We don't know whether they've testified in trials. We don't know whether they're active or retired. We simply do not know the answers to that. Once we have that list, then we'll have a very good sense of where this is going to go.
One attorney was telling us today that that comes under the heading of the Pinch's motion, and that there has to be a motion made before that information is disclosed. Is that correct?
Traditionally, that's how that information is obtained. Administrative records within the police department are typically obtained by what's called a Pinch's motion. The thing is, with Pinch's motions, it only goes back to misconduct for 5 years. And so Brady material may be larger than that. It may extend beyond 5 years. And so what we are seeking to do in the DA's office is to get all the information, all the convictions, all the misconduct, centralize it, and ultimately disseminate it to all the parties who are entitled to receive it.
So what are we talking about as far as crimes that these officers could have been convicted of or committing? I mean,
sure. Well, the clearest line here is what are called crimes of moral turpitude. It's crimes that the law looks at as indicating a defect in character. For instance, theft offenses, so grand theft, petty theft, offenses where one lies. So perjury, for instance.
How do officers retain their jobs with those kinds of issues?
That's a question that I can't answer, but you're in the right place to ask it. It's something the police department should answer. I don't know the answer.
Does that number 80 sound high to you?
Well, I'm not sure what the 80 is. I don't know if it's historic throughout the history of the San Francisco Police Department. If it's 80 active officers, that sounds high to me.
How do these numbers come to
It's odd that the Chronicle gets the numbers before the DA's office gets the numbers. We still don't have a number, and we still don't have names. So how Jackson got that information from the police department is something that he can answer, or the police department. I frankly have no idea.
And you said that you guys have been looking into this issue for a while. I mean, this is not. Tell me how this all came to light. You guys obviously know about this problem.
Well, it was not a problem. It was an issue to implement best practices. And what we're seeking to do for the last year is to implement a written policy to avoid exactly what we have here. And that process was underway. There was a lot of discussions with the police department about fine-tuning it. In the course of that, we learned that Debbie Madden, a civilian employee, had a conviction for a crime of moral turpitude that wasn't turned over, and that's what led us to action, to act now, to implement a written policy right away, and to seek all pertinent information from the police department. And we did that by way of letter. We're still, as I said, awaiting the results of that, although the Chronicle appears to have some of it.
How long have you been waiting?
The letter was sent mid-April.
So the Chronicle has the result of that action?
The Chronicle has a number of 80 police officers. The DA's office does not have a number of 80. That has not been communicated to us. It's in the Chronicle. It's not sourced. I don't know where he got it, so I can't speak to it. I know that to speak to what it all means is premature until we get a true list, find out whether it's 80 or 100 or 200 or 5, and figure out whether those people have testified and what impact that testimony has had on cases. If cases are identified that have problems, they will be redressed and fixed, because that should not happen.
How do you characterize the communication between the department and the community?
It's obviously imperfect as shown by what's happened. There are miscommunications, and unfortunately the miscommunications, if it's systemic, can lead to problems like this. But right now we have, like I said, implemented a written policy. We're seeking to identify all the officers, and we're doing all we can to fix it.
Are these problems more difficult or less difficult to fix than problems with the drug lab?
It's It's hard to say because right now we don't know what the scope of the problem is. I hope that we'll learn something from the police department shortly, but right now
What's
it's too
this
early.
database that you guys are talking about?
It's a way to centralize the information. It's information that we receive from the police department, from the California Highway Patrol, internally in the DA's office if people have anecdotes or know of, for instance, false testimony or something like that. It's a way to centralize that information, flag it in pertinent cases, and so if one of those officers were to testify in trial, the defense would receive all that information.
It appears some of this is sticky.